Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome, fresh from the paradise that is GMT Games. We have Stalingrad 42, and we're going to do an unboxing video of it for you. And it sounds like I have a super loud voice today. It's because I had a crap ton of coffee at work. So we just got this, just came out of the box. This is Stalingrad 42 from designer Mark Simonich and GMT Games. This is part of kind of a loose series. So it's sometimes called a series. I tend to think it's not really. It's a family of games that have similar related mechanics. Stalingrad 42 is the newest one. The previous entry in the sequence was Holland 44, which I have played and which I like a lot. There's also Ardennes 44, which has now been printed a couple of times. Normandy 44 is another personal favorite. And Ukraine 43 is in this sequence as well. This is since Ukraine 43, which I think was the first one, might have been Ardennes 44. So mostly these have been West Front, but now here we are in the East Front. And this is also the largest game in the series in map footprint. So we will see what the components look like. Nice, thick, so I'll talk about this. 2-inch box. Okay, most of the games in this sequence actually don't come in a 2-inch box. They come in like that sort of weird 1.5 or 1.75 GMT box. Not sure why. I believe this will be no problem to get back in the box just based on the number of components. Because this size of box should easily accommodate 2 counter trays, and 2 counter trays should be sufficient. But that said, the box is pretty full right now. So we have 2 dice, a gray and a red, thematically appropriate. Nice touch. I always like to see this. Is it important? No, but I like to see it because I like to roll dice that are thematically appropriate colors. So we have a rule book, which is 32 pages, which is, about on par with the rest of the games in the family. We have full color. It's a matte finish, which I personally prefer. Looks like it's quite well illustrated. This is sometimes called the Zachbond series of games, because that's the one mechanic of a number. It's the mechanic that's more or less unique to this series, and all the games share that mechanic. Not all the games have determined defense, I believe. So that's another feature that applies here. This looks good. There are 32 pages of rules. 25 pages up to advanced rules. So there are some advanced rules, and there are some campaign game only rules, and then we have are these scenarios? Scenarios. Okay. So I'm curious. Okay. So that's actually really great. One of the things that I guess you could complain about with Ardennes 44, and for that matter, U.S. Civil War from the same designer, Mark Simonich, is that there are 2-map games that really have to be played as 2-map games. You can futz around with them on 1 map if you want, but all of the scenarios, and indeed in the case of U.S. Civil War, the design itself is predicated on playing on the entire map. So there are shorter scenarios, but there are no smaller scenarios. This is not that. This scenario, Fall Blau, uses only map A. This scenario uses only maps C and D. Operation Uranus uses only maps A and B. And in the campaign game, you use all the maps. Now, I think the nominal count here is going to be 4 maps, but it's really 3 maps in area. So we have a playbook. This is a 24-page playbook to pretty much the same standard as the rulebook. Full color. Very nice. Extended examples of play. At this point, for a war game, I feel like war games that don't include a beefy example of play are being kind of lazy at this point. I strongly prefer to see this. And I think it's almost a necessity, I think, at this point. Because this is how these are not like super complicated games. They're not necessarily incredibly beginner-friendly war games, but you could learn to war game off this thing. The expanded sequence of play really helps with that if you're trying to do it. Big spread in the middle here. Caucasus Campaign. Wait a minute. So does this replace the Caucasus Campaign? That would be interesting. That didn't occur to me. There's Operation Uranus. So that it's great that there's smaller scenarios in here. They aren't necessarily super duper small. We have here a whole bunch of historical notes. We have some design notes. There's some interesting quirks in a couple games of the series that I'm interested in seeing if those carried over here, like the maximum factors that are in, I think, Ardennes 44. And I think those have been in and out in various editions. And here we have some replacement and marker charts for what the replacements cost. So that looks pretty cool. We also got, you probably spotted it already, they're also included a counter tray, which is ironic because GMT's out of counter trays. Nevertheless, I could use a counter tray. And I'm pretty sure I can get another counter tray in the box after everything is unpunched. So we have player aid cards. We have these two, which are identical. These contain the terrain effects charts and the combat results tables, and we do have determined defense. And we do have the somewhat idiosyncratic multiple hex advances after combat, which is interesting, which depends on what kind of unit it is. And I think that's actually neat too. And based on the scale of these things, the way these things tend to be, I didn't notice, well, we'll see when we get to the maps, what the time scale is. So we have setup cards. This is another one of those things that I like. This is a little less necessary at this point than examples of play, but I always like to see this. Most game companies don't do this anymore, and I don't like that. GMT doesn't even do this anymore that often. Vance von Boris tends to put these in his games, and Mark Simonich tends to put these in his games, and I find that they speed setup. So I like to have them. So we have what looks like setup cards for each of the scenarios, which is nice. Cox's Campaign, Cox's Campaign. Oh, here's a turn record track too. So these look like they are about 5-day turns, which is cool. I mentioned elsewhere in a previous video that this game is kind of Case Blue, but more playable. Not to say that Case Blue, the OCS Case Blue, of course, is unplayable. It's not. It's playable, and I've played it, but it's just so much work. You have to have a specially designed, almost dedicated space to play it. This is, 3 or so maps. There's a Uranus scenario setup cards, campaign game, and Fall Blau. Interesting little fold-out thing. That's something I saw in Ardennes 44 as well. It's not going to happen today, but I'll show you the maps, but I don't have the space right this minute to set everything up. So we got counter sheets. We got 3 counter sheets here. 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. Okay, cool. These look like they are 9/16 inch counters. I would have to say I will clip these with the 2.5 millimeter Oregon Laminations corner rounder. I will be able to get this entire game in 2 counter trays with no problem. These are on the very thick, quite thick, I should say. The quite thick GMT brown core stuff that they've been using for a lot more games lately. I also like to see that. Nice counter stock. These will be very sturdy, I think. They're not as thick as like those old school, some of the really, really old school, like before Monarch bought Avalon Hill counters or the Battle Line counters or something like that. But they're pretty thick, more than sufficient. We have a sheet here of Soviets. Looks like red are guards and the brown are just the regular Soviets. And we have a sheet of miscellaneous stuff and markers. I see pretty much nothing here that I consider out of line with my experience with the series. It's not, I'm not the world's greatest expert on this series or not, but I've played, I don't own all the games in the series, but I've played Ardennes 44, Holland 44, and Normandy 44, and I like them all a lot. I don't own Ukraine 43, and it comes up from time to time, and it's never high on the priority list. There's always something else in the way. So we have what looks like some army markers of some kind here. That will be interesting to see how that works. Here's a Volga flotilla and some Waffen-SS. These look like brigades and divisions. So does that hold true for the remainder? We definitely have Soviet divisions and also some Soviet corps. The Germans look like we have mostly divisions. Even the armor is divisions. I take these to be Romanians and possibly these to be Hungarians. Those are all divisions too. So we're talking about division level game. So, you know, this is not like a tiny game, right? It's not, it's a beefy sized game. It's just not as big as Case Blue. But Case Blue is 5 miles to the hex, and this is going to be something more like 20 or something like that. 16, perhaps. I didn't check that either. Although it probably says on the box. So here is, well, we'll call it the Rostov Map, because it's the Rostov Map. This is Map A. Now that we've mentioned the map scale, I want to see that. And it's almost certainly on the box. Map scale is 10 miles to the hex. So, you know, it's half the size of Case Blue. And I'm talking Case Blue, by which I mean the Case Blue part of Case Blue and the enemy at the gates part of Case Blue, but not the Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 part of Case Blue that's not in Case Blue, but that you can play with Case Blue. So, very nice map. Simonich is, of course, the map artist as well. Highly functional map. I don't know that I'd call it particularly elaborate, but I think it's very attractive. I have always liked this style of map. But we have another map. Okay, let's try and do this in an organized way. This is a standard war game size map. So it's about 22 or 23 inches by 33 or 34 inches, okay? So there's one of these, and we have another one of these. A lot of big empty space in the Soviet Union, so it can be a little challenging to make the terrain look really interesting. This is, of course, where we have Stalingrad itself. I wonder what this is. This might be desert. Probably not going to see tons of action down there, but we'll see. We will see. And here's Sartov. We had Rostov on the previous maps. And then we have these two small... Are any of these... No, these are printed on one side. Then we have two smaller half-sized maps, which I think are the Caucasus maps. So this is map C, or map C2, and this is map C1. So because we have two full-sized and two half-sized maps, so we can see, actually, these will fit together just like this. That's adorable. So pretty fantastic. I think these maps look really good. They will certainly be extremely functional to play on. At a glance, I see no hex in which the terrain will be vaguely ambiguous, which is fantastic. So I've been pumped about this. This was like a day it was announced P500 for me. There was never any question about whether I was going to get this or not. I think I did back out a pre-order at one point, but I put it back on. Glad I did. It's a fantastic looking game. I enjoy the games in this series. They are deep, but not particularly burdensome to play. Estimated playtime. Is there an estimated playtime on the box? Probably not, because there almost never is on GMT games. It doesn't say. It says 2 to 4 players, which I could easily agree with. You could probably squeeze 6 players into this, but the unit density shouldn't be astonishingly high either, so maybe you don't want to. I'm going to guess, based on prior games in the series, that this is probably about a 20-hour game. That sounds about right to me. But there are smaller scenarios, too. So, Stalingrad 42 is finally here in my greedy little hands. And we have now shown you the components. We got to put these charming dice back in the box. It looks like GMT found a different dice supplier than they had previously used. But I like having thematically appropriate colors. So Stalingrad 42, it is here. It looks great. I will hope to get this to the table. I know that a buddy of mine has also bought it because I ordered the copy for him and I have it sitting over here. So he will probably want to rush over here as soon as I call him and tell him that it has arrived. Stalingrad 42. So other stuff coming on the channel. Please stay tuned. I want to thank you for watching. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it. Share it around and leave me a comment or question, or if there's something else you would like to see or would like answered. I will make every attempt. I've been doing a lot better at staying abreast of current commentary on the channel lately. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.